So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sanjeev Singh. I would like to officially welcome you to this webinar. We are presenting with our fellow speakers from my MTY group and Papa Murphy's, Erez Gordon and Alex Timlin from SAP. So quick intro. My name is Sanjeev Singh. I'm the founder and CEO of ASAR Digital. Been in SAP space for almost 25 years. Been in SAP ERP, CRM, CX all along in my life. And with me, my fellow guest, Erez Gordon. He is the Director of BI and Data Architecture from Papa Murphy's MTY Group. I will let Erez kind of introduce himself, and then I will pass it on to Alex before we go into the agenda and then the presentation. So Erez, you want to quickly just introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay. Erez Gordon. Sanjay did a great job. So yeah, Director with Papa Murphy's, and we're part of MTY Group, and I'll share more as we go along on our journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Erez. And Alex Timlin, the Chief CRM and CX expert at SAP. So Alex is very passionate, as you can see him on the LinkedIn. He really believes in the power of AI and how AI has the power to streamline operations and cut a lot of undue wastage in the process of serving our customers. So Alex, I'll let you just quickly introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
A hell of an introduction, but thank you. And really fortunate to hear the story from Erez and team, and it's a great representation of what we're trying to achieve here at SAP, which is how do we start bridging the gap between kind of traditional front office applications and back office applications, and think a little bit differently in the era of AI around what are the opportunities to reimagine and rethink some of the legacy ways of doing business and legacy business processes that will hopefully unlock some value for the business, but actually unlock a lot of value for business users and customers alike in a new era of AI technology.
Thank you, Alex. So with that, I'll just let me pass it on. So quickly in terms of agenda, of course, we did the introduction. I just have one slide on ASAR Digital, who we are, what we do. And then I will pass it on to Erez to kind of talk about the Papa Murphy's journey on this SAP CX and where they are in their journey and where they're headed. And then I thought it would be a good idea to kind of have Alex give some insights on what's new cooking at SAP and how SAP is taking generative AI to the next level in helping customers and augmenting their products with their AI solutions. And then we'll open up for more like a QA and conversation. So kind of quick intro on ASAR Digital. So we are a SAP certified gold partner, specializing mainly around whole lead to cash process. What that means is the customer experience solution, that's commerce, sales, service, and then SAP S/4HANA public cloud in the backend. And then in between, we have SAP BTP, which you all know is more like a middleware plus application development environment. And anything new coming from SAP, like generative AI and all those capabilities are being added through BTP. So that's what we specialize in. We're based here in Lisle, Illinois, just outside Chicago, and we have an offshore delivery center in India. And then some of our key differentiators along with what we do is, first, we are known for using our rapid deployment package to implement various SAP solutions we specialize in. You can see here we have renamed our branding as Cheetah.ai. So Cheetah has been our formerly rapid deployment package brand name. But what we have done now, we have added some AI capabilities into this deployment package. So what that means is we are using AI to streamline some of the processes around data migration. Some of the assets we have built to help customers really go through the business processes, help customers really get prepared to do the testing, user acceptance testing, training. So some of these areas where we have felt that we need to put in more consulting resources, which kind of drives the implementation cost higher. But using that AI as a part of our deployment package, it really helps us bring the implementation cost down and then pass it on those benefits to our customers. We have also built this Sanjaya self-service portal, which Erez is going to talk about, because we are very proud to have them as our very first customer to go live on Sanjaya. Erez will talk about the story that where they are and how they are leveraging that platform. You can see some of the books which I have co-authored with our fellow authors from SAP. And in terms of industry focus, purely like manufacturing, wholesale distribution, consumer product, life sciences, professional services. These are the handful of industries we specialize in. So that's something about our company. So with that, what I would like to do is I would like to pass it on to Erez and then Erez can just kind of go through his slides. So Erez, I'll be driving your slides if that's okay, and if you can let me know whenever you want me to move.
Yeah, you bet. So thank you, Sanjay. Thank you very much for that intro and welcome. Pleasure to be here and spend some time with you and Alex. So a little bit about who we are, because that kind of helps with the journey. So we're part of MTY Food Groups, which is one of the largest franchisors in the North America restaurant industry. We've been in business for 40 plus years, headquartered up in Canada, in Montreal, beautiful Montreal, for those of you that have that. And then we have brand centers both in Canada and the US. And our journey really is about a growth by merger and acquisitions. If you get on our site and look at that, we've grown by acquisitions over the years as we get new brands. So if we go to the next slide, give you a little bit more picture of that. These really are some of the brands. You'll recognize those brands if you're anywhere in the US along the way, or Canada. But we have 90 plus brands underneath the umbrella. And we're located in 40 plus countries with close to 7,000 over 7,000 locations. One of the key areas for us is that really people know us by our brands, whether it's Papa Murphy's, the brand that I came from, or Cold Stone's a very popular ice cream brand. There's other brands, Taco Time, right? So really nobody knows MTY Food Groups, and that's key to us in our delivery is how do we keep that brand identity? Because our customer loyalty is really at the brand, right? People are loyal to their individual brands, but they're not necessarily loyal to the overall customer. They just don't know that company. And that really creates a dynamics that we've been trying to follow in this journey. So if we go to the next slide, I will say a little bit about, you'll hear most of the story right now is about Papa Murphy's. What is Papa Murphy's, right? It's the largest take and bake pizza. So you come in, you customize your pizza. We have about 1,000 locations across the US, Canada, and United Arab Emirates. And been part of MTY Group for close to now 6 years, right? So it's the largest concept, but by no means every concept within MTY really brings a different kind of thought and process to it. And so we start our journey, right? Where was our journey? As we found ourselves during a lot of these acquisitions occurred before or after COVID, and COVID was an interesting journey for us, right? And everybody sort of stopped, and we came out of that journey, and we started looking at what's the value of MTY bring to our franchisees, right? We're about 80% franchisee. We have about 20% of the stores are actually owned by the corporate. So a lot of what we manage is our franchisee relationships. And what we found ourselves with was 5 completely separate brand centers, as we call them, right? So Kahala down in Canada is 26, or down in Scottsdale, 26 brands. And we have that spread across. Each one had their own independent CRM and in fact, almost their own independent ERP. And we were moving data between them. And you could just, I think all of us could imagine the difficulty of trying to move between different vendors. Many of our systems had 10, 15 years of historical customizations within that. And that really led us to an area where we look to see how do we start to bring that together and get the efficiencies across all of our relationship management. We had unique processes to support each of our brands. We have large brands, small brands. And so that led us to really different expectations for supporting those from us as the franchisor at MTY to those franchisees. As well as we had a number of that was really self-service to our franchisees, because the customer in this relationship is really those folks that are owning our locations, trying to run our locations. And we had some brand specific. So that's where we came from. And we started our journey into modernizing our back office in this case, and as well as our thoughts. So if we go to the next slide, we sort of came into the journey. The journey was really started around the decision to select a single ERP. We embarked on a significant process to come through that. And through that process, we selected SAP S/4HANA as the MTY ERP vendor. And we started then to look at how do we implement with the ERP, and yet what do we do with our CRM? Because our CRMs, we still had 5 different CRMs, and that was the source of our data that fed our ERP. And so we made a second decision at that point, was to say, an integrated solution is not feasible for us. It wasn't future mergers or acquisitions were not going to be very fast. And so we really looked at, let's look for a single CRM to simplify the data management, and in that case, the integration to SAP. So that was the first step in our journey. And then got us to the next slide, which was really what was our decision around CRM. And so we went through a process of looking at our existing CRMs. We were using SAP for a very small function, and we made the decision as an organization to migrate to SAP C4C, in this case, Cloud for Customer. And really, when you think about for us, because it could be a lot of things to a lot of people, right? CRM could mean different things. What is the customer? And in this case, for us, the customers are franchisees in our stores. So we manage all of our franchisees. The plan, the journey will be to manage all of our franchisee relationships. Who's the owners? Maybe an owner of 100 stores, maybe an owner of one store, right? Different relationship in that space. What is all of our locations? We have 7,000 locations. It's amazing how difficult it was to report who was open, who was that, right? That data was very difficult across different systems where the definitions were different, where there was a Salesforce or an SAP or a Dynamics, we had all problems. And then trying to manage our contracts around that. We have close to 4,000 different franchisees. We have leases at 7,000 locations. You can understand that to manage that really required us to get to a single. And then we have call centers that actually service our franchisees. And so we wanted to do service in the same system so that we could do that. And we're doing, and then some of the sales process. We haven't necessarily decided to migrate all of our franchise sales processes, but we're looking at where leads and opportunities and that kind of, so all that became the decision to move towards SAP C4C. If we go to the next slide, then then we realized, oh, wow, we also need a partner to help us do that. We had a partner for S4HANA. They were very open to saying they weren't the CRM, and we went looking for a partner. And so we did our search to say we wanted a partner that had a strong SAP C4C, right? Why have a partner if you don't have somebody that can do that? But we also wanted somebody that really focused on utilizing the SAP core functionality. We have very custom solutions going up to it, and it hasn't served us well in the long term around that. And then we wanted someone that led with understanding our business needs, right? Ask us what our business needs, learn our business, and then help us with a solution for that. And we looked for somebody with a similar culture. These are sort of, if you look at us at MTY, we think our culture is, we use the 3 words: excellence, dedication, innovation. And what we found was ASAR brought that to the table. We felt very good about that. And we made the decision, obviously, to select ASAR as our partner for our C4C implementation through our journey. If we go to the next slide, as we started that journey, one of the key things we saw was we also needed a portal to point to our franchisees so that we can self-service. They could come get their own data. They could potentially start to communicate with us, whether it's ticketing, whether it's requests. We have close to 4,000 franchisees, and then they have their employees. And so you can notice that changes over time. One key thing is in the restaurant business, it's a very transient, very fluid workforce. A lot of them are teenagers, young adults that work in restaurants. And so that changes pretty quickly. And so the idea for self-service for our franchisees to be able to self-service that data was very key to us. It was very difficult. And so we looked for a portal. We needed it to be integrated with C4C. That's what is all the data. And what we saw was we wanted to minimize our internal development efforts, and potentially the integration was a key area. We wanted to be able to self-service it and create a modern look. One of the things that was key for us is we saw that utilization wasn't very good by our target audience. So it's great to have a portal, but if nobody comes and uses it, you're still sending emails, you're still doing that. And so we needed it to be much more improved UI than we previously had. We had built some things in-house, or we had used a different product. And so we started looking at what SAP could offer us in that space. And at that time also ASAR was launching Sanjaya. And so we took a long, hard look at that. and saw that it really was the right partnership for us with the integration with C4C to make the decision to go with Sanjaya, knowing that it was in its early development cycle. So if we go to the next slide, it just kind of says, yeah, we went ahead and picked Sanjaya. We really made that. We looked at what it would take to build it within the existing BTP framework. We realized we personally did not want to take on that development undertaking. There's a lot that needs to be done there, and it made sense to partner with ASAR in this journey. And so that was the journey that we embarked upon. So if we go to the next slide, just to give you an idea as to what we were looking for, right? We really have multiple personas. You could be a franchisee coming in, which we need to deliver a different view. We have different functionality if you're a corporate employee that wants to come in and manage that. And we're able to work with ASAR to really develop what we consider a much improved UI. We've gotten a lot of compliments from our user base into the new UI look and feel. And so that's what people expect anymore from a front-end user interface, right? People are used to going to their Googles and stuff. And so this really has helped us build more attachment. People are coming to get the data and really simplify the workflow as we can push it out with complementing everything we're doing and are planning to do in SAP. And then the other thing that you see here is, as we go to the next slide, is right, identity for us continues to be brand identity. And it doesn't mean anything to have an MTY front end to franchisors. They know sort of, they've heard that, they might get a bill from MTY. But really, in reality, we really are looking at being able to bring a single portal that we can manage within our SAP environment that's curtailed towards whether it's Kahala. Here's the Kahala brands. The previous slide, you saw the PMI, the Papa Murphy's, PMI. I'm throwing acronyms out there already, and it's only like 10 minutes into this thing. So Papa Murphy's, right? And so that really was the partnership that we've worked with ASAR to develop a customized view based on who you are in our system. We know what brand you're part of, and therefore we can raise that and give you access to that. So that's been the value of what we're seeing and where we want to take this as we go along. Next slide. So where are we now? So I think we moved a slide. So one of the things we wanted to share a little bit is, before we hand over to Alex, because that's what I really want to hear from today, is really where are we in our journey, right? We've been on this journey with ASAR for about a year. We've been up. Papa Murphy's has been live on C4C and Sanjaya for about 3 months. We're finalizing our next the rest of our brands over the next 3-6 months. We anticipate having everybody up on C4C, and now we've got all our data in one place. Lots of learnings through this journey, right? Company culture, processes. We tried to standardize some of those along the way. I would say as much as you can standardize ahead of time would have made things a little simpler, right? The culture, one should never underestimate where one is in a corporate culture when you do a transformational change such as this. But as we get those final nuts and bolts out of the way, data migration coming from 5 systems to 1 is work, and that one should not lose track of. But once we get there, having all the data in one system, really now we're seeing the ability to unlock the power of the tool. How do we start to improve our workflows, the experience of our franchisees, the interactions with our franchisees, whether it's contract renewals, whether it's transfers, all of that we're looking to do, is now we're shifting to start thinking about what's the roadmap? What can we use the tool? How do we start to take advantage of some of the features and functionality that exists in SAP to take us through that next set of the journey? So with that, I think I'd love to hear a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to Alex to talk a little about SAP, and then we'll come back, I'm sure, as we go along.
Sure. Thank you, Harrison. That was very helpful for the audience. And if you have any questions, please put that in the chat, and then I'll take those questions at the end when we open up for Q&A. But for now, I'll pass it on to Alex. So Alex, if you can just want to give us some sneak peek into what's new coming from SAP. I know Sapphire is coming up. So I think people are interested in really hearing from you.
No, it was a pleasure. And I think just building on a really fantastic philosophy from Eris, not just a product, but really thinking about how do we engage with our franchisees in a way that provides them value and provides them utility. And working together with McKinsey on some research piece, and this has really been the bedrock of how we've approached the market opportunity for customer portals with ASAR Digital, is if you look at a business right now, the vast majority of the interactions with a customer, be it a consumer, a business partner, a franchisee, or anything else in between, a lot of the interactions that we have are transparently boring, repetitive, low-value tasks. Like the things you do the most with a financial institution, with a wholesaler, or with a brand partner are quite often ordering ingredients, they're checking on deliveries, they're adding to deliveries, they're changing deliveries. And a lot of these things are not very automated. They're very manual processes. And what McKinsey looked at was a value framework that we've adopted here at SAP as well, to say, look, 80% of the deals that are happening in B2B industries are standardized. They're high volume, they're low value, with the same offering, the same products, the same pricing, the same conditions, but different unit quantities. You might not be ordering the same thing all the time, but the price at which is set and the availability of what's set is largely dictated by the terms and conditions. And there's a lot of revenue leakage, and there's also a lot of error in just processing orders. A lot of order processing is very manual, both on the customer side and also on the business side. Now, the nirvana for us, and something that we've been pioneering, perhaps depressingly, since the 1970s and 80s, is if you think about how someone is interacting between ERP systems, like electronic direct integration, an EDI process between ERP systems is a standard that's been there and well adopted since the 80s and 90s, depending on your country. We haven't really innovated on the process of order taking beyond kind of that for a huge amount of business to business interactions. And if we can get the point of saying today, our research says that anywhere up to 80% of the orders and interactions between you and a customer are manual. They are touched by human hands at some point. So if we can flip that on its head and get to the point where 90% of orders are captured electronically and error-free, it actually means you've got a more predictable business. But it also helps you with cost of sale. So we can make sure that we've got a better control over our predictability, our cash flow, but also on-time payment, on-time delivery, and cash in the bank, all by using digital tools to replace people going out there with PDF forms and Word documents, or someone scribbling down an order over a telephone. It is still a huge amount of business that goes around. And if we look at the next slide, I think what's really worth us thinking about, and it's something that Eris and the team really prioritized in terms of the business user experience, this is still what a lot of customer experience looks like for franchisees and for business partners. What you're looking at is a quote, a sales order, a service order, and an invoice. And they are ugly as hell in most cases. Most businesses have not innovated their document types in their ERP system in at least a decade. And they might have made them digital versions of a paper, but they still look and feel like the paper version. They're just a digital version and a DocuSign or similar. And what we need to think about is, if we're going to look at the opportunity for AI and automation, it's not in imagery and creativity and replacing a lot of the jobs that we've got in really interesting segments that people like doing. It's about really looking at the boring, awful jobs that customers have to do and your teams have to do to support customers around this. On average, 3 hours a day is spent on customer admin. That's just processing this stuff, or helping figure out who in the organization is going to process this stuff for you. And this translates for a business with more than $1 billion in revenue to 125 million in costs every year. So customer operations for €1 billion business is 125 million of these documents sitting up for grabs. That could and should be a very, very simple process to implement. Now, not every business is a €1 billion business. And if we look at the next slide, I think what we're trying to look at is, how do we think about how we connect these things and think of these existing systems and existing processes you have and look for the low-hanging fruit that isn't a multi-million-dollar project. And this is why I love the Sinja project for the Papa Murphy's brand, in that we're not talking about like a 5-year digital transformation. We're talking about, how do I get to the point where I can streamline and standardize my data across these different markets and these different brands, and then think about, okay, well, what's the next step? Now that I've got my data into that one portal and I've connected the front office experience with my back office document types and transactions, what's the low-hanging fruit for me to look at what could be more automated and could be more interesting if I was building the system from scratch today without any of that 15 years worth of legacy? Now, that 15 years worth of legacy 5 years ago was innovation. 10 years ago was innovation. But the last big release for most CRM systems, and I'll badmouth myself included, CRM on-prem for SAP came out around the same time as Salesforce and Dynamics. It was actually largely the same team involved in building Siebel, Dynamics, SAP, and Salesforce. And the problem with those systems is they were conceived in an era before Instagram, before ChatGPT, before WhatsApp. The last major release of CRM and Dynamics before, from a code-based perspective, came out the same year as the iPhone 2. So it's pre-App Store, it's pre-mobile internet. It's just a very, very different world. And if we're thinking not about how do I change the systems I've got to fit this world, but if I didn't have any legacy, what would I attack first? What would I do differently? This is where systems of agents and systems of insight really come together in really interesting ways, because you can get an agent, an autonomous AI agent, to help you fulfill a really boring manual process in weeks, not in months. Now, the only way you can do that is once you've standardized that data and made that data available to artificial intelligence. The data layer and the investment that have been made is the key piece. But now that it's there, it's looking at what can we do with it. And if we look at the next slide, some of the areas that we've found to be the most beneficial for customers is how do we start connecting some of the order to cash processes, so the repetitive, boring tasks that happen between customers and your brands, and connect them with some of these digital portals like we looked at with the Sinja portal. An example is for a business in the UK. They supply bread to supermarkets and corner stores. So they're doing bread rolls, they're doing croissants, they're doing sliced bread, but essentially it's bread. It's unit quantities of bread. And every single day, they had 1,800 phone calls to customer service and customer operations from their retail partners to change the unit quantities of bread. Now, that is a boring, repetitive task for the person placing the order or changing the order and for the person processing the order. So what we did instead was looked at, how do we start looking at emails coming in, telephones coming in, and just give someone a mobile application where they can place an order or change an order. End result, there's 1,600 less phone calls a day. There's still 200 phone calls a day to call center and into sales teams to expand the range or to do things that are different. But the boring everyday process is now done on a mobile application. And it might start off as a form or a little button on the front end, but what's happening in the back end is these agents are connecting the dots and bringing these data pieces together. We have the ability today to look at an email and an attachment and make a decision about, am I looking at a sales order, a service order, a purchase order, or an invoice? And can I give it to the right department? Or can I fulfill that process without a human needing to process that order? These things are happening at enterprise-wide scale today at SAP, but they're being used by some very large customers. So Bosch Power Tools have categorized 1 million customer interactions with a service agent. But similarly, we've got a fantastic jewelry brand in Austria, in Christ, where they're just looking at, how do I get my product information in order and use an agent to find bad product data in my organization and say, hey, you're missing a price, you're missing a description, or you're missing an image. Which, for all of us, these boring little everyday tasks of someone forgot to copy a cell over from an Excel spreadsheet, or someone forgot to look at an email or missed an attachment, or someone can't reconcile a payment with an invoice, all of these types of things machines can do for us at the scale of millions of interactions with one agent. And that does allow us to start thinking about processes in a very, very different way. And I think just onto the last slide, if we're thinking of, if we're going to make any investment or any way of looking at your own organization and your own business, it's what are the boring everyday tasks that are happening in your finance teams, in your customer operations teams, in your delivery teams, in your sales teams, in your service teams, and not how can you train them on an AI system? How can you use an AI system to take tickets away from them, to take invoices away from them, to take jobs away from them that they don't want to do, to give them more time to do the things that they and you want them to focus on, which is interacting with your customers, building markets and solving issues. And I think that's the really exciting thing for me, is how we can connect data and look at how do I actually look at taking away the boring everyday tasks that make the world go round and get from 80% of things being manual into 80 or 90% of our interactions with customers being digital and customers experiencing a better 24/7 experience as a result.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. This is very helpful. So I think what we can do is we can just kind of open up and make it more like a conversational. I'm sure, Aries, you have some questions for Alex. I have some questions, and our audience has some questions. So I'll just stop presenting and let's kind of talk about together. So first thing, I'll just go back to you, Aries. I know you've been using this new platform, new system for the last 3 months, and we are all about customer experience. So do you have any kind of a feedback data point from your customer, from your franchises, that where do they see now compared to where they were before? And any of those things, if you can share with us, I think that would really love to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think what Alex just touched on, and I was already, mentally making some notes on where AI will really help, right? Because one of the things for us right now where we're at is the transition has been from our franchisees. They haven't yet seen the value momentarily, right? Because we've only done one site and we had a system for 15 years. We changed it. We're still in the growing pains to figure it all out. And so taking away, using some of that to now start to show the value, right? The first thing, service is a great one, right? How do we take away some of those tickets, Alex? That's a great term. How do we take away some of those tickets so that they get the turnaround quicker, right? Because we've seen a little bit of an SLA rise. We're close to getting back to where we were, but with any new system, right? It's a little different. It's a new process. We had the last one pretty well refined in the one brand that we're now looking at how do we start to do that. So I think that's the initial feedback is what's the value to me? Because the customer doesn't see the value of the change for us as we're integrating to do it the same way, but we'll be able to do more with less. And once we can start what Alex described, I think I was energized listening to Alex. Okay, I can see now a little bit more of the future. So I think that's the feedback to say, how do we get back to where we were across the much larger global scale? Because, and how do we do it across all of our customers so we're consistent? If you're a little brand with 10 franchisees, we want to give you the same service that we give a brand that has 1,000 franchisees, because goodness knows we spend more money on the 1,000, right? We just have more capital in that brand. So that's what I heard, and where I think we'll want to start to utilize the tool when we get there. So excited for that. So,
and I think that's a great segue into a conversation I had in the UK with a customer at a conference last week around technology adoption. Like, why is it so hard to get customers and business partners to use new technology when it looks great? It feels much better than the system they've been using for 15 years. And there was an enterprise architect at a large banking institution said, look, we did a survey and we did some focus groups of the new users of why they weren't looking at the technology. And they went, look, I just really like my spreadsheet. So what I've been working on is I've got my spreadsheet. It has all the information I need to know about my accounts, all the information I need to know about what's going on. And I know how to be able to do my job because I've got my own system and my own methodology. And the reality is most CRM systems aren't the problem. It's the stuff that happens around CRM systems in how I make quotes, Excel and Word documents, how I keep track of my customer list for visits. That's another Excel spreadsheet. How I look at my tasks for the day in a call center. People always have these tickets and these little notes that are scribbled down and sit around the edges and the periphery of what's going on. And there's so much of our lives now lives in your email inbox. It lives in Teams. It lives in notes and pieces of information. And if you can actually read and suck that information in and start making sense of it to say, I found an opportunity to make something go away, people are like, well, I don't need to do my quotes over here anymore. And I don't need to do contract changes over here anymore. And I don't need to look at my promotional plan in this system anymore. It's something where when the system gives you something back, where it's not just you inputting fields in to capture information, but you get information presented back to you that's genuinely useful, that's where it becomes really interesting for the business users. And as you say, it's the initial adoption is you're doing something to them. You're making them work differently and they don't like it. No business user likes it. But when they start seeing, well, here's what I don't have to do anymore, they then all of a sudden get way more willing to adopt the digital portal, to do some of those things that culturally, it's easy as a phone call, it's easier as a visit, but we want to take it away and provide something that's more scalable, more cost effective, and more digital moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Alex. And I will just add my perspective, because we talk to the customers every day, and you're right, like they are so much used to of doing things in a certain way. Everybody has their own favorite Excel sheet and then in emails, and they're very happy with that. But when I see is that you only motivate them when you show them something they don't have to do. And then you get the attention. Oh, so I don't have to do this? Yes, you don't have to enter the data again, because system already knows that based on email you exchange with the customer or attachment you send, whatever the case may be. And that's when you start seeing their lights, the eyes kind of lighting up. Oh yeah, really? So I think a lot of customers, what you mentioned is that, I mean, some people at least they understand the value of this automation and AI, what they can do for your business. But I think everybody right now is struggling. Hey, where do I start? And this is where we lean back to you, Alex. Give us some, based on what you have seen other customers, because you are at the leading edge, helping many customers adopt AI. And what do you see, what's working, what's not working? And that will also help areas. It's as he's kind of formulating his strategy internally to add that AI to his CRM, CX systems.
Yeah, no, I'll keep it in the B2B domain. So if we're looking at whether you're a wholesaler or whether you're a CPG brand or whether you're a manufacturer, this year, 90% of your money is going to come from existing customers. Like 90% of your money is going to come from existing business partners and existing trade routes. There'll be some new products, there'll be some new innovation, there might be a new market, but it ain't going to be more than 10% of your revenue. So 90% of your money comes from something that's very predictable. And if you're looking at the most predictable tasks and the things that raise the most support tickets and the things that raise the most overheads in customer operations, you'll figure out in every enterprise, there's 4 or 5 things that actually take huge amounts of time, energy, and effort on both sides that don't need to happen. I had one customer that has 20,000 phone calls a week to ask for copies of invoices. That's something that could literally be a chatbot. Like, ask for an invoice, get an invoice, make sure it's there. Make sure that the invoice is on the portal, surface it to the customer, and make sure that it's maybe a bit more difficult for them to make a phone call to get the invoice. But in the end result is they can get the invoice 24/7 on a digital portal without waiting in a queue for even a minute. It's there in a second. Like stuff like that is really low hanging fruit. And if we're looking at another customer in Germany, they had more than 1,000 emails every single week for very large orders from existing customers. And the problem wasn't actually how long it took them to process the order. What they realized was no one was telling the customer they were processing the order. So there was an email with an attachment. Someone took the email and took the attachment and sorted it out into the right department internally. And then the department keyed it in to an SAP ERP system. At no point did the customer know before the delivery arrived at the site that the order had even been placed. There was no acknowledgement. And if we can look at, actually, the reason that people are calling you to check on the order is they've got no idea whether you've accepted the order and no idea on when it's going to be delivered. And there's a huge amount of error in your business in dealing with these customers that you deal with all the time. So what are the most common things you do with 90% of your revenue? It's they buy things, you deliver things, and if you don't get the delivery right, they complain about things. And like if you can look at those types of interactions and be more proactive by saying, do you want to place this order again? Do you want to change this order? I'm going to be late. Do you want me to deliver it or do you want me to split it? Like, should I be 2 days late and give you the whole order, or can I give you what I've got now and fulfill the second half of the order in a week? Those types of things can be done proactively with communications because we can now automate the process, connect those data across inventory, supply chain, finance, and CRM. But you need to look at, first and foremost, your customers, your processes, and where you spend the most energy, and think about how could we do this differently and how could we do this more easily if we were thinking mobile first, AI first, and building this process today.
Excellent. So Alex, there's a question from the audience. They want to know that what's the difference between the CX AI toolkit and SAP Joule? You know, they keep hearing these two terms, and something we can clarify for the audience.
No, with pleasure. I think what we tried to do at SAP over the last 2 years is to think about not having AI for CX, AI for finance, AI for supply chain, because honestly, it's confusing for customers because, as we've talked about, a lot of these different kind of lines blur. So we have created one co-pilot, one kind of virtual assistant across the whole of the SAP portfolio, and it's called Joule. Okay. And the main reason for Joule is for a business user, not a customer, but a business user of an SAP application to be able to get assistance in the area of the application they're working, or to ask questions about data from a different part of the platform and bring it to wherever they're working. It's first and foremost a navigational aid and a productivity tool. It's a co-pilot.
Yeah.
But the problem with these co-pilots and the advantage of moving into the world of autonomous agents is there are times where you want to do something on behalf of a business user and you don't want them necessarily involved. You want the agent to do it for them. So we've had to create a workbench, a tool set where you can actually build your own use cases that people can experience inside Joule as a business user, but also you could build an agent that a customer or consumer could interact with as well. So the toolkit is our workbench for creating use cases, creating value, and being able to experiment with your own type of AI. But the tool that a business user will use will be Joule across the whole SAP portfolio, whether it's in analytics, whether it's in Sales Cloud, or whether it's in finance or supply chain.
Perfect. So these toolkits, are they going to be more like LOB specific or business process specific? Let's say somebody's going to make agent for finance, somebody make something for supply chain. Can you just clarify that?
There'll be a mix. There'll be some things where you can do in between using the business data cloud. But in reality, if you want to improve the usefulness of an application, you need something that is built into the workflows and the business processes of that application to make it useful. You shouldn't need to tune or hook in an agent builder or a workflow builder to make it understand what the application is, what people normally do, and what's going on. So at SAP, we've got embedded AI. That's something that lives within the application suite. But then we've got the ability to create your own AI with Joule and these workbench tools. So we will find every enterprise, large and small, will need to use their own large language model to do something. They'll have to bring their own AI to do something at some point in their lives. But we see the business user experience being a lot easier by not needing to train people on 4 or 5 co-pilots, by just having one co-pilot where you work. And that's why SAP was one of the first tools to be integrated with Microsoft Copilot. So that if you're used to working in a productivity app and working with Microsoft Copilot, it will actually speak to our assistant in Joule. So you'll be using Joule, but it's inside Copilot. Similarly, if you're using Joule inside of an SAP application, you won't need to log into a Microsoft application and log into Microsoft Copilot to be able to get access to that there. And I think that's where it gets really interesting with our approach at SAP. We're not saying there's going to be one platform to rule them all. We are saying that actually it's about data, applications, and processes connecting SAP and non-SAP. And I think that's the reality of what everyone needs to look at in a vendor is, how does it work with the tech I've already got? How is it going to better connect what I've got today? And how is it going to give me a springboard into moving into new things in the future? We're really, really hopeful at SAP that we've got that balance of both, of saying you've got the best of suite and those embedded capabilities that we bring with SAP, but we're very pragmatic and very realistic that you're going to need a best of breed solution for something at some point in your life. And we just need to connect to it and make it a little bit more frictionless than it's been in the past.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Next question I have for you is, so many customers we see they're running like legacy CRM, similar to what scenario you are in, and then of course, all the merger acquisition, just add another dimension to that transformation. So the question is, they're asking that what some of the lessons learned you can share that so they can prepare better before embarking on this transformation journey for their CRM system.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think the biggest learning obviously is process and culture standardization, if at all possible, right? I mean, the more you can spend time understanding the business processes up front and simultaneous, you don't want to wait forever because you could be stuck in a huge list on that. But don't underestimate. I think the biggest lesson I think is don't underestimate the change management need and support that's required in such a process. Don't underestimate the cultural change and the organizational change that needs to be managed. Those are specific roles in such a journey that you don't want to. We get stuck a lot of times thinking it's a technology change, right? It's just a technology implementation. But these journeys are cultural, they're organizational, and the more you can do simultaneously manage that and have people dedicated to that space, I think is a key lesson we learned. We should have invested as just as much as we do in analysts and business systems analysts and developers. We need to do that in the culture, and I think that's the biggest one. These are transformational changes for an organization on how you think about your business. How do you do it? Don't get stuck in. We just want to model. We want to mold SAP to do the exact same process I did before.
Yeah.
It don't try to force the technology. Think outside the box and think about what's the best for the business. What does the business need? I think what lead with what does the business need and don't try to stick to the old way we've done it just because that's the way we did it. It's an uncomfortable place, but there's a lot of value in doing that through the journey. And I think that's the biggest lesson we learned to prepare that up front is spend that time while you do it. You can do it while you're doing it, while
Yeah.
there's enough, but don't lose track of having those conversations and think you're just going to put it in and then get to UAT and everybody goes, this doesn't work the way my dynamics works. Well, okay, but what's the business process? Let's talk about the business.
Yeah.
What are you trying to accomplish? And let's think about that. So that's my feedback on that.
Perfect.
Biggest lesson learned.
I see, Alex, you're smiling with something you have occurred to your mind. You want to share?
I hear it so many times, and I think it's such an under-invested area of business where I think there is a real skill in IT roles and thinking about who are my business process owners. And I think what we are seeing a lot of our customers is you will find young, hungry, or old and frustrated employees who will be very, very vocal in telling you how something could work better. And if you start with, as Era said, the process, like, why is this process hard and what do you want the process to look like? Adoption is so much easier. Yeah. But if you show them your shiny new screens and your widgets, they don't care. Like, you're doing stuff to them. No one is really in love with their CRM system as a business user. The ones who are secretly want to work in product management. The ones that actually use it every day, it's a necessary evil. So it's like, if you start with, what is the business process? If you start with what is best practice, and if you start with explaining to people, if you follow a best practice that's well established, well supported, and well iterated on, it will be easier for us to give you new things. And it will be easier for you to do your day job. It'll be easier for us to provide a better customer service. Behind every bad experience is a bad customized business process. And too many people blame the technology and the integrations. It's not. You tried to make the technology do something because it was what the business wanted. But when you give the business what they asked for, it doesn't look or feel anything like something that's going to add value. And it comes back to, how do we focus on the job to be done, the business process? What's the problem with it today? And what's the opportunity to make it better for the user as well as for the customer? And then I think we're onto a path of real transformational change. But you need to empower people in the business to partner with you in IT if you're going to get out of there and move forward. And I think architects and analysts are coming back to the front of the business for a good reason, because everyone's got too much tech. And we all struggle with, how do I make it work and respond to business demands?
Yeah, no. So I have to add something, just my experience with just speaking with one of our customers. And I had a very interesting conversation. This head of customer experience says that, Sanjeev, I'm not looking for lift and shift. I said, no, that's so refreshing to hear from you, because many times people think that it's technology transformation means like, okay, just we have to replace one application because it is at the end of life cycle or it's end of support. Now let's take something new, bright and shiny and just move it. I said, this is your time, because when the last application was implemented, world was different. To your point, Alex, we were like pre-digital media or this whole Instagram phase. Now we are like AI first, cloud first. So from that perspective, see who are your customers. Your customers have changed. Like now we have the younger customers coming in. Their expectations from the systems you offer or the product you offer is different than what your customers were expecting from you 20 years back or 10 years back. And so definitely, I think the change management is the biggest see, like what are we trying to accomplish rather than just thinking, hey, we have this application going out of support and let's implement a new SAP solution. I think that is really a key in driving that messaging as part of the transformation, in my opinion.
And I think one question for Eris from me as well, just to see if it's agreement or not. I think one of the worst piece of advices that I've seen going around the industry for the last 5 years is B2B buyers want a consumer-like experience in what they do. I'm like, no, they don't. Like I'm operating a pizza business. I want to buy ingredients. I want it to be quick. I want it to be efficient, and I want it to work on a mobile phone or a tablet. I don't want to have to wade through pictures of pepperoni to order more pepperoni. I know what pepperoni looks like. I just need it to be quick. And I think that kind of thing of trying to make beautiful websites for really utilitarian things of like, how do I just get this done and do it quickly, is something that's kind of got out of hand in a lot of areas of the business. The best portals I see are really built with a very ergonomic, very minimalist design to say it needs to be performant, it needs to be clear, it needs to be quick. And when I'm doing discovery, it needs to be buried away in a part of the app that leads people to where they've got the time. I want them to get in and out and find value in the places that they do as the most repetitive interactions.
True.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And really, we always say you got 15 minutes most of the time a day that they want to figure out what happened yesterday, right? They're running some of our own folks are running their own stores, right? So we're trying to hit that people, and then maybe somebody that owns 100 and has a bunch of employees can have the time, but it's really about time and trouble, right? They're coming to you to leave two things, right? They don't have time and they got trouble, and so the quicker you can get them in and out and to their point, you otherwise they're not coming back for the sake, and then they just get frustrated with you, and it goes downhill from there. Yeah. So no, you're exactly right. It's not about you're not entertaining them. They can do that with their Netflix and everything else. That's not what we're here for.
Yeah, I think they already know. So the key difference, in my opinion, is like in B2B side, customers mainly already know what they want. So hey, whoever can just make their life easier by removing that repetitive tasks, and that's what they're looking for. Like I remember in the beginning when we were doing the whole B2B and B2C commerce demo for the customers, and we were saying, hey, see how you can nicely see the catalog, browse through, and always I'll tell you, I used to get a question, can I set up a replenishment order? I know I'm buying this every time. I don't need to go and add to the cart and do the checkout. Let me just schedule it, and I just want to receive the shipment every week. That's it.
Save a quote, download it, import it. Like it's just really, really basic things of like, how do you reduce friction and add value? I think that's the key in anything. I'd say as a takeaway is, I think what Eris and the team did really, really well is think about, how do I get a scalable, repeatable foundation that works across all of these different brands? But then how do I think about what are the jobs to be done? And how do I do that really, really quickly in a way that looks and feels like the brand for the franchise owner? And we've got fantastic customers like with Eris and team, but also right the way through to Nestle have 200 portals and 100,000 SKUs on exactly the same technology that MYT and the team are using. It will scale up, it will scale down, but it all starts with the process, the experience, and building back from that. What am I looking to achieve in mind? And our job here at SAP is to work with the likes of ASAR Digital to figure out how do we work hand in hand to translate some of those business requirements into a scalable, extensible, modular platform that will help you operationalize and automate some of those tasks to focus on the value with your people.
Thank you, Alex. So I know we just have 5 minutes left, and I just have a last question before we close out. So this is, again, very personal. Alex, how do you feel about technology and the future? Are you scared? Are you excited?
I've got 6-year-old twin boys, and at least once a week, we spend in front of ChatGPT and they make their own books. And when you explain to a 6-year-old that you can create a picture from anything they can imagine, and they can create a story from anything they imagine, you realize the potential of the world that we're in. I think there's an endless amount of creativity and endless amount of utility that's happening. But I do think a lot of people are thinking about the jobs to be done in a way of like, how do I grow? How do I get my business doing it? They're not really looking at usefulness and utility. I think we're living in an unparalleled era of innovation where you can speak to a machine and the machine can build an application for you. It can help you with your everyday tasks, and it can even write a story, write a book, and write an image. I think we now need to think about moving away from the era that we've been probably for the last 10, 15 years at the mercy of applications and machines, into now thinking about, well, if the machine can work on my behalf more efficiently and I'm not inputting stuff into the machine or inputting stuff into the application, how would I design applications to be more human, and how would I design digital interactions to be more human when voice and text is the main input, not inputting fields and clicking with a mouse? I think for me, I'm endlessly optimistic about what's happening. I think we need to figure out the right thing in our personal lives and our professional lives of where we're going to make use for it. But I do think it's something that's inevitable, but not necessarily in a bad way.
Great, no, nicely put. Erez, what's your perspective on that question?
Yeah, no, it's hard to follow Alex's. That was perfect. Thank you, Alex. No, I think it's the same, right? I think it's now we have to get to a place, and part of where I see the journey is to get to why we're looking at single partners, right? Is so that we can focus about thinking about how to use it differently, right? We're spending so much time and effort doing the old way of looking at it. 20 years ago, you're worried about spreadsheets and data. And the data is important and accuracy is important, but the tools now can handle so much of that we can then finally, I think, switch to looking at how do we grow the business in a different way and utilize more of our resources to growing the business, and not to just keeping a view of the business if we let the tools do it and don't get hung up in the old way. And that's what I feel, I want to get there, right? And how do we change that mindset for the organization to do that? And that's what I'm excited about, utilizing the tools that way, because we're too stuck in thinking 20 years ago. Even processes are 20 years old. We like our 20-year-old processes. Well, yeah, but we were different. Everything was different. The world was different. Our companies were different. Our staff was different. We just keep going. So it's time to utilize, because it is a bright future. Just imagining it is sometimes the most difficult part. So this is great. Conversations like this really help stimulate the
Yes.
thinking. And so I appreciate that. And so
I'm going to steal that one.
perfect.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, I am more excited than ever. Like, I've been in the IT space forever. I don't want to disclose my age, but I've come from the Microsoft DOS era to now the Chat GPT and generative AI era. So I've seen it all, and my excitement is more than ever. I always say that we are only limited by our imagination. You imagine, and you have tools and systems available for us to realize our dreams. So with that, I would like to thank you so much, Erez and Alex, for your time. Really appreciate, and thank you all the audience for joining. We'll definitely share this recording, but till next time, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.